Good afternoon. My name is Del Rodriguez, and this is Flabonga Monthrothacube. I have my co-host with me.
I think I'm that. Yeah, I think that's right. This way.
That's you. Yeah.
That's me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that me intro? Yeah. Tony Stevenson here, folks, from Free Agent. Round 2 for me as co-host. So, yeah, Del's had me back, which is obviously a good start to our budding relationship as co-hosts. So, yeah, happy to be here, mate.
And we also have our guest of honor, Tim Chilestone. Hey, Tim, how's it going?
Fantastic. Thank you for having me on.
Hold on, let's do a close-up first. This is like our boy band look. There we go.
That's terrifying, isn't it? Look at that.
I mean, I think we'd make an awesome three-piece. We're like Blink-182, but not quite as cool.
Exactly. I'm glad you didn't say Westlife.
I think there's 4 in Westlife, right?
Yeah, but there's always one missing.
Also, I don't really dance, so Blink-182 way better for me. Tim, thank you for taking the time with being with Tony and myself. For those who don't know you, again, please could you just introduce yourself like so. We've already got your name, what company you represent, and what do you do for a living?
So you've already got my name, as you said. My name is Tim. I'm from TCS Guernsey, and we are a full-service bookkeeping agency based in, surprisingly, Guernsey, hence the name. We primarily look after small to medium businesses, mostly limited companies, a few sole traders and individuals as well, based both in Guernsey and a few in the UK.
Cool. Why Guernsey? Is that where you're originally from? Did you move there? And what are the benefits of operating in Guernsey?
So I moved here about 7.5 years ago. My wife is an A&E nurse, and she applied for a job over here and then annoyingly got the job, and we're like, oh no, now we have to move. And I really hate moving house, but then it was like, well, hang on a minute. Huntingdon, Guernsey, there's no competition really, is there? Absolutely love it here. It's a fantastic place to live. Reduce my commute time every day from 1.5 hours each way to 5 minutes each way. Even when the weather's rotten, it's still nicer than living in Huntingdon. And apologies to anyone who does live in Huntingdon, but being originally from St Neots, I have no sympathy for you. In terms of the benefits of operating in Guernsey are, it's generally easier to get most things done, with some exceptions that I'm sure we'll discuss. But generally, most things are sort of a bit more at your fingertips in terms of dealing with the tax office and all those sorts of things. All our clients are really nearby. Sort of 75% of our clients are within a 5-minute walk of the office, and all those sorts of things of just being in a physically small jurisdiction make things a lot easier.
That's cool. You said you hate moving. I don't think anyone likes moving. What's your least favorite aspect of having to move?
My least favorite aspect of having to move is the fact that every time I've moved house, I've never really quite been in a position to afford to pay someone else to move everything for me. And it's specifically the worst bit of moving is unloading a van. Loading a van is actually all right. Driving the van hundreds of miles and getting on a ferry is fine. Unloading stuff at the other end is just the worst thing.
I am sort of refreshing myself currently on the costs associated with moving house, and it will be the first move after having owned a house. So we own the current house we live in, and we're going to move to another house possibly at some point. And I am still having to go back and recheck the calculations again and again and again as to how much moving costs when you factor in stamp duty, estate agents fees, removal fees, and then all the other sort of odds and sods, is not far off wiping out what we've paid off on our mortgage in the last 7 years. I'm joking. It's single digit thousands difference between what we've paid off in our mortgage over the last 7 years of being in this house and what it will cost to move. I was like, that's how I keep people trapped, isn't it? Basically back to square one again, but on a shorter time frame.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Sorry, the reason why I'm distracted is I think, Tony, you look like you belong on a Queen album cover.
Oh, do I?
Yeah, he does a bit, yeah.
Well, you're wearing a black t-shirt, and the background
just floating heads, yeah.
And you are just a floating head. I'm just like, Galileo.
I wonder if that helps. Does that help?
There we go. Although I kind of like the ominous nature of your floating head. Can we have the
Would
floating
you
head?
like it Shall I just switch between the two, just sort of
Yeah.
indiscriminately through the process? Yeah.
It was very, very Bohemian Rhapsody. But you need like 4 of you, really.
Yes, I wonder if we could do that. There might be some sort of effect on the live stream that we could
Got
take that through.
Or failing that, we can throw some AI at it, right? Because AI is going to solve all our problems.
Absolutely. All of them. Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Free Agent uses AI, right?
Yeah, we do, mate. We got some embedded into the tool. Of course we have.
Technology.
Sorry. We have.
Free Agent didn't pay me to say that, by the way. I just thought I'd say it.
Just check it out.
Yeah, because everyone's talking about AI. Tim, I think in the post I asked a couple of questions. Let me go back to the post to make sure I ask the questions I posted, because that's a typical me thing to do. Not actually ask the questions I suggested. Bear with me. See, this is the problem with live, by the way. You can't edit this in post. This is just me faffing around on a computer. What did I say?
While you're doing that,
was it about why we're so incredibly incredible, or something along those lines?
I said, do bookkeepers have superpowers?
Yeah, we do. Obviously, like it's look, the superpower of bookkeepers is being available to clients on a much more regular basis than traditionally most accountants have been. You had frozen, or I did. The superpower of bookkeepers is sort of being available on a much more regular and up-to-date basis than traditionally accountants have been. And I don't want to ignite the whole bookkeepers versus accountants debate again, because we've all been there 1,000 times and we know what the pros and cons are. And there's been arguments on LinkedIn recently about whether people are dinosaurs for doing tax returns in January and things like that. But the point of bookkeepers is that generally if your business is using a bookkeeper rather than just a period end or year end accountant, you are you're getting all of your financial information as up to date as it possibly can be. Now, is that always up to the very minute? No, because by the very nature of operations of different people's businesses, there are various reasons why that isn't always possible. But it could be up to date as far as 2 days ago or yesterday or last Friday, whereas with the more traditional model, it was all about, okay, well, it's now the 19th of February. Congratulations, you made a profit in July last year. It's like, okay, so what have we done since July last year? I don't know, haven't got that far yet. So look, the superpower of bookkeepers is being able to see what's going on as up to the minute as it possibly can be. And that then allows you to provide the information to business owners to make decisions in a timely fashion, because if your costs have gone up and you've noticed 7 months later, it's too late. You've already made the loss, right? Whereas if your electricity bill's suddenly gone up 10%, if your rent has increased, if your cost of sales has gone up massively because there's been a war somewhere, and that's all happened this week, then by using a decent bookkeeper, you can react quickly, you can change your prices quickly or look to reduce costs or whatever before it impacts your overall position. And that's the real superpower of bookkeepers. And because we do that all the time with numerous different clients all day, every day, we then develop almost like a sort of sixth sense, like you can kind of feel with some clients when they're about to get in trouble and hopefully stop that happening.
I want to sort of like be able to replace the phrase spidey senses, but with something that was bookkeeping appropriate, but my brain's not kind of like not filling that gap in yet. So I'm going to keep processing that one and see if I can come up with something.
Number sense? That doesn't sound as cool though, does it? I'm going to jump into the comments real quick. We got Lara Manton on the comments. I reckon the three of you would make a pretty good band. Gentlemen, I need to ask that. If we're going to form a band, we're not, but if we were, first of all, what genre are we going for? We'd have to agree upon this.
That's a difficult question, isn't it? There's so many good options. I mean, like, we could, if you really want to do it as a joke, then we could just be a really bad Taylor Swift cover band, which I've said for the benefit of everyone sitting in the next room currently, next to the life-size cutout of Taylor Swift.
My 2-year-old daughter loves dancing around to Swiftie, so I'm sure she'd be pretty devastated actually, because she quite regularly tells me, "Daddy, you stop singing," which is fine with me. Yeah.
Okay, I'll agree to this. We can be a Taylor Swift cover band.
Amazing.
Flabonga Monthrothacube.
Yes.
I think it's impressive that you managed to get the name of the show merged into something else, because I can barely say the name of the show. And but Tim, would you mind giving it a go? Would you mind trying to say it?
Flabonga Monthrothacube.
Nailed it. Didn't even phase you.
Didn't practice or anything.
There's a clip of Lara, the lady who says you come on the show, failing miserably at saying the name. It's quite funny.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've watched it a couple of times. We should. I can do it again and get it wrong on purpose if you want.
No, that's cool. That's cool. Amelia Gilbert. Yay Taylor. Cool.
It's bookkeeping's biggest Taylor Swift fan.
All right. Good to know. I should probably ask you some serious questions as well, shouldn't I?
Absolutely.
What is a journal? Bookkeepers and accountants love journals. What are they? Dumb it down for me. Laymanize it.
A journal is the most fundamental transaction in any sort of bookkeeping, and that's whether you're creating a journal or whether a journal is being created in the background, and it's simply creating the debit and credit entries for absolutely every single transaction that happens in bookkeeping anywhere.
That is the most succinct answer I've got to that question. I think I asked Tony when he was a guest on the show, and I think he gave me a good answer.
Did you?
I feel like I did.
No, wow.
No? And I've asked some accountants and bookkeepers, they come up with different explanations, and so thank you. That's the most succinct one I've had.
We love a journal entry. We do a lot of them. I definitely absolutely never enter them the wrong way around and then look at the trial balance to see if I've done it right and then correct it. That never happens.
That never happens. No, ever. Never.
So you haven't got dealing clip on two post-it notes either side of it. No.
You're making jokes, but anyone who's not an accountant or bookkeeper would not understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Exactly, I should probably point out that I spent the first 10 years of my career in practice, so I'm for my sins ACA qualified, but I work in tech now, so that was a while back.
We can forgive you for that.
Thanks, Tim.
I kind of want to stir this a little bit because I've got an accountant and a bookkeeper on at the same time. But you know what? I'm not.
Reformed accountant.
Here's my analogy, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, right?
Yeah.
Bookkeepers are like nurses and accountants are like doctors. When it comes to patient care, nurses are often in the day-to-day and they have their power and authority to make decisions that will save lives, but doctors sometimes have oversight on certain things and don't see patients as often, but still have a different level of different type of responsibility. Is that fair?
It's probably not far off. That's probably fair. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you need both. You know, if you've ever been unwell and had to be to hospital, if there were no nurses, the doctors are great, but they couldn't.
Oh yeah, no, and yeah, I'm not going to say too much about this because being married to a nurse, I'm going to get in trouble. But yeah, like
it's almost like I knew that and brought it up and used the analogy on purpose.
Nurses can function quite fantastically without doctors. Doctors without nurses, not so much.
Yeah.
And I think that to be like slightly serious about it, there's way more blurring of the lines in the last few years. If you look at what services bookkeepers and especially ICB bookkeepers are providing to their clients, it's a much larger range of services from end to end, including we do year-end accounts and tax returns for a lot of our local Guernsey clients, which traditionally we would have gone as far as maybe trial balance, then handed it over to a Tony who would have done the actual year-end accounts and tax returns and things. Similarly, we're well aware of accountancy firms who were traditional accountancy firms who are now providing daily bookkeeping services. Will Farnell talks about it constantly.
Yep.
And so there's a lot more overlap between bookkeepers and accountants than there used to be. And I think that I get the impression from LinkedIn that is kind of more advanced in the UK and by extension Guernsey, Jersey and Isle of Man than it is in a lot of other parts of the world. When we see people from the States posting, it's often a really, really clear line.
Yeah. And
bookkeepers don't know how to do X and accountants don't understand Y. And we certainly still get the occasional, we'll get a set of year-end adjustments from an accountancy firm who we have a joint client with. And some of the entries don't make any sense at all. And we say, well, what are you actually doing with this? And they say, it's to correct this, 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 and this. It's like, okay, cool. So, but I can't enter it like that. How do you want me to enter it? And they go, I don't know. I don't know. I've never used this software, and this software will be Xero or Sage or QuickBooks. So that can be interesting. But I think that someone recently said that, you know, bookkeepers are accountants. Like we're accountancy professionals, okay? And the sort of the 1980s version of a bookkeeper, which was, you know, Pat Butcher, just like adding up all the VAT and that's it. That's no longer the case. You know, the services that bookkeepers are providing is a huge range of services, and we're hopefully providing like a really good level of service to all of our clients.
So it is interesting, like so my background in technology, although I do a slightly strange role now in terms of like kind of thought leadership and other bits and pieces, integrations, partnerships and other bits and pieces. But my sort of background bedrock in my technology part of my career is implementation, right? So that is working with accountants and bookkeepers to get better at using so I used to work for Xero, and I did it for Free Agent as well, 5-ish years in total. And obviously I'm generalizing here, but bookkeepers' granular knowledge of the systems that they used in terms of like, we'll get the system open and talk about it, was always tip top. Like it was often a noticeable difference in terms of like, if I was working with a bookkeeping practice, you could feel how hands-on they were and how well they'd applied the technology to the to the task at hand, and also then be able to kind of interpret that data like live, right, as it comes through. Like you said, if you've got your phone bills rolled onto a contract it shouldn't be on, and it's gone up from 50 quid to 500 quid in the course of a month, you can pick it up now rather than in a year's time. You've wasted loads of money that was unnecessary, right? So it always struck me that the bookkeeping community's engagement with technology is great. Which is
basically yes.
You're on mute, Dale.
Dale, come on, Dale. You're supposed to be the man in charge. You're supposed to know what you're doing.
That's the second time I've done that today as well. No joke. That's embarrassing. After all these years and COVID and all that, still. Anyway, all right, time for a silly question, Tim. If you were a biscuit, what kind of biscuit would you be that could actually portray your personality and why, but don't just pick your favorite biscuit?
That's a really difficult question. I don't know how. That's a really, really difficult question. There's so many good types of biscuit.
There are many types of biscuit. You don't have to answer it now. What we can do is
that's a really difficult. Yeah, I obviously I want to go because I want to kind of choose like a high quality biscuit, obviously. So it's, you know, probably like somewhere from M&S or something. You know, you know the ones that like that shape with the chocolate. They're really good.
Yeah, it's not just a biscuit; it's an M&S biscuit.
Yeah, exactly.
Tony,
Exactly.
Yes. You said you've got a fun question.
I haven't
heard it yet, so please.
And do you know what, mate? I don't know whether this was subliminal or whether this is just like kind of just total coincidence, but it ties in quite nicely with your silly question.
Right.
So my silly question is I have accidentally, despite like advanced protestations that this would never be the case, become a bit of a coffee snob as I've got older. Yeah, absolutely right. So as I've got older, I've drunk less and less and less alcohol to the point where I kind of barely drink now. And coffee has become more and more important to me. But I'm quite picky about the coffee that I like to drink. So if we can all look, the first question is, do you drink coffee, Tim? Because this is a pointless question if you don't. Good, right? Okay, we're all in the same room. So the second question is like, we can all agree that artisan coffee from like a local like a cafe that's been sourced ethically and stuff is like, that's A1, right? You know, if you can find that great coffee shop, we're all happy with that. But sometimes we get stuck with like the commercial brands and we have to choose something that is chain generica, right? So my question to you is like, when presented with all the main recognizable brands of coffee, which is your favorite one and which is the one that you would avoid?
So I'm going to give you two separate answers to this because first of all, in Guernsey, we have got one Costa coffee and there's no Starbucks, no Nero, none of the other chains at all.
Okay, so imagine you're on mainland.
So this is what this answer hasn't changed for years, right? It depends what drink you're buying, okay?
Absolutely.
If you just want espresso, and because you're tired and you want a decent espresso, Cafe Nero every time, because their coffee is actually decent quality. They don't burn it, and actually they're like, you can get a double espresso still for less than £2, which is really cheap. Okay, if you want like a flat white or a cappuccino or a latte or something like that, so any hot coffee made with milk, Costa. Right, and the reason was that Costa used to buy better milk in the UK than any of the other coffee chains. I don't know if that's the case now. They're owned by, is it Coca-Cola they're owned by now or something, or McDonald's or something? They're owned by Coca-Cola. But when they were owned by Whitbread, they always bought better milk than everybody else. And then finally, if you want a ridiculous 20 fluid ounce, full of sugar, full of cream, bright pink, full of nonsense syrups and sprinkles and whipped cream and all sorts,
the Flabonga Monthrothacube of coffees.
That's Starbucks, right? So out of the three, those are the three answers. It does depend what coffee you're buying, but honestly, if you're that tired and you just want coffee, whatever's closer.
I'm glad you gave this some pre-thought, because for anyone who's listening, I didn't feed this to Tim beforehand. You obviously, I've been asked this question. It really was, yeah.
That's really good. That was really good, man.
And it's really important. And next time you're out and you want a coffee, just think about what type of coffee you want, and then think about which of those chains is more appropriate.
Interesting. That is interesting, because Costa for me is that I won't drink coffee before Costa, partly because the drinks aren't the right size, right? So if you order a flat white, it's not flat white. Flat white is a specific size of coffee, and it's double the size of it. Kirsty Mitchell, who, if you're listening, always says that the trick there is to order a cortado if you want a flat white. They kind of track up fairly reliably one size below what they should be, which is great if you like lots of coffee. But I don't like lots of coffee. I like a smaller coffee. So. Starbucks is my flat white of choice in that realm, that sphere. That I don't know, Dale. Do you like? We're going to cover this question probably again and again, so I don't know whether you want to answer as well, or if you want to give it some more thinking time, like Tim has.
No. So I want to start first of all with one of my gripes with coffee when you order it. I usually like a long black. For those who don't know, it's essentially an Americano with half as much water, right? My beef is when I order a long black or an Americano, people ask me, do you want milk with that? And I'm just like, it's called an Americano because it's supposed to be black. There's not supposed to be milk in it at all. Like, and I dislike when baristas ask me that, because it's your job to know that an Americano is just black coffee. But that's one gripe. When I'm out and about, I will forsake coffee if it's not an artisanal place. That's how much of a snob I am.
Oh, wow,
I've never particularly liked Starbucks that much. Of all the chains, I would say I agree with Tim. Costa's probably the better of the coffees.
Wow. Wow.
All Press are pretty good, but they're a smaller chain, but they're great. They do some pretty tasty coffee. And what I really hate sometimes is if I order an espresso and then order an Americano, the cost of the Americano is like 3 times as much. I'm like, I'm just paying for the water.
Extra water, yeah.
Just paying for the water, which we know is literally like super cheap. Sorry, I'm just going on a rant.
No, what you've done there is you've correctly identified that the most profitable item in any coffee reselling establishment is an Americano. Is the most profitable thing you can possibly sell in a coffee shop, because it's just espresso and hot water. It's the milk that costs money.
That's fascinating, because so it's implying almost that like when you have an Americano and it's loads more expensive, that the water is more expensive than the coffee. So like when my wife and I went traveling, we visited a bunch of places, and Philippines was one of the places, and you could buy a triple rum and coke was cheaper than a single rum and coke, because the coke was more expensive than the rum that they brewed locally.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah.
So if you want one more ridiculous price comparison, if you go to Costa Coffee in Gibraltar, then a cappuccino is, I think, £3.60, and a pint of San Miguel is £2.10.
I want to add another one on. I want to add another one on top of this, which is a slight segue back into the field of what we were originally here to talk about, which was the corporation tax jump in Guernsey, which I was nosing through your LinkedIn post, Tim, and you were saying, so if you make
for large retailers,
yeah, if you make $499, I'll let you tell the story, but
so it does only apply to large retailers, obviously. So most limited companies in Guernsey, under the current 0-10 regime, pay 0% corporation tax. Okay. So we pay 0% corporation tax. Almost all of our clients pay 0% corporation tax. There's then a 10% band and a 20% band, which is mostly reserved for income from renting out property that you own, and certain regulated activities. So corporate service providers and trusts and things, they pay corporation tax on certain earnings. But there's a band for what they call large retailers. So large retailers, there's only probably about 5 on the island. There's no marginal rate on it at all. So it's 500k. And if you hit 500k, you pay corporation tax on all of your profit. So realistically, then the conversation was that if you are a large retailer and you've got a net profit that year before tax of 507k, do you scrabble around quickly trying to spend 7.5 grand in order to pay 0%? Because you're not just paying the corporation tax on the bit over 500k, you're paying on every penny of your profit.
Why did you buy that Tesla for the company? It was free.
I don't know. Exactly.
That's not accounting advice for anyone listening, by the way.
Yeah, this is not tax advice
at
at
all.
all.
Some serious disclaimers in there.
And also, just to be really clear, we do not have any clients that qualify as large retailers, so we definitely have never done anything along those lines. But it does, yeah.
You circumvented my next question. I was going to ask you, do you have any clients you've had to give that up?
It does seem, it's one of those things that's like an odd rule. There's lots of odd rules in the tax law in Guernsey, and some of it has just come from the past, like a lot of the odd rules in the UK tax law have. But some of it is different features of 010. When 010 was introduced, it introduced a whole new set of problems that people hadn't considered, and there's been a lot of tweaks. There was famously both Guernsey and Jersey introduced the 010 regime, and then had a thing called deemed distributions, where they to basically stop people using limited companies to avoid tax. And then there was some endless nonsense about it being, it went to the European Court of Human Rights or something daft about the deemed distribution, when they had to change it after 2 years. So yeah, it's, there's a lot of those weird little rules that have cropped up over the last sort of 20 years since 010 has been in place.
The best explanation and definition I've heard of the UK tax law is actually from David Mitchell on the show, the last comedian David Mitchell. I'm going to paraphrase what he says. He says, essentially, tax in the UK for individuals is a tax on conscience. The wealthier you are, the more options you have, and the higher your moral values, the more tax you will pay, generally speaking.
It seems fair, doesn't it?
Yeah. We're going to talk about retail, because am I saying you kind of specialize in that area in terms of bookkeeping and supporting clients?
Yeah, so hospitality and retail is currently about 60-ish% of our client base and takes up about 80% of our time.
Okay, super loaded question. Why are EPOS systems so bad?
EPOS systems aren't bad. The integration between EPOS systems and financial management systems are bad. And the reason they're bad is that they've either been built by the EPOS system or they've been built by the finance system, effectively. For me, the main reason that all these integrations are terrible is because they rely on non-experts to create the mapping of what should be posted where. Okay, and that means you've either got typically an accountant rather than a bookkeeper who actually doesn't understand how retail businesses work quite often, or you've got an EPOS software developer who actually doesn't understand how bookkeeping should work. Really, these should all be posted as all the integrations should be posted as journals, and they're not. And they kind of lead people down the garden path a bit. And I actually had a conversation with someone very recently who's a very experienced bookkeeper but hadn't really dealt with a lot of EPOS integrations. They kind of followed all the rules and they did all the setup properly, and they're now getting completely different results to what they expect they should get, because they've set it up how Xero and the particular EPOS provider in question, who I won't name because they're quite litigious, have told them.
Yeah, none of us can afford that. Please don't name their names.
I won't name. I absolutely will not name that EPOS provider now. So they've done the setup exactly how they say to set it up, but the setup's nonsense, right? And one of the reasons the setup is nonsense is because a lot, not all, but a lot of these EPOS systems, they create an invoice per day. Okay, they post all the sales to the invoice, and let's say you've done 1,000 quid in sales, right? Amazing. Then they create payments, and they create one for all the cards and one for all the cash and one for all the vouchers, and then they post those payments directly against the invoice. If the payments don't actually equal the same as the invoice because you've had refunds or voids or discounts or anything like that. The difference just sort of sits there. And then you've got an invoice for £1,000 that's got £1.87 unpaid. And you don't know why, and you have to go and investigate. Now, if you're dealing with that on a day-to-day basis and you've got the procedures and the staff and the tech and whatever you need in place to deal with that on a day-to-day basis, it's not a massive issue. But even we frequently have to go back and re-reconcile. We always use control accounts. We never paste anything direct. We frequently have to go back and re-reconcile a control account because of something we've discovered that someone's done in their till system somewhere that it doesn't matter how many times you tell them, please do not reopen a table from 5 days ago and adjust the payments. They're going to do it anyway, right? There's also the more human element that people in busy environments, retail, but especially hospitality, they do make mistakes. And at the moment, what happens in almost every integration I've come across, which is a lot, is that those mistakes just get posted through to the FMS. So the most common scenario that I use for this is, imagine that you're a fairly new member of staff at a busy restaurant and you've taken an order from a table, you've gone over to put it through the EPOS system so it goes to the kitchen, and you've made 3 or 4 mistakes, you've tried to fix them, you just can't work out how to fix it, but it's busy, you've got to go and serve other customers. The common thing that most places do in that scenario is they say, oh, don't worry about it, cash it off, print the receipt, and at the end of the shift, and tell the kitchen not to make it, start again, and at the end of the shift, we'll just refund that off. And then everyone forgets, the receipt gets lost at the end of the shift, the supervisor, deputy manager, whatever's already gone home, maybe it got a bit quieter and the waiter went home early and didn't get a chance to make that adjustment. You've now got a sale recorded that doesn't actually exist. And that immediately then at the end of the day comes through to Xero, QuickBooks, Sage, whatever you're using. So you just get these, and then imagine that that's happening more. That's not just once that happens. That will happen 2 or 3 times a day or per week, and it will compound and compound and compound. People also just fail to communicate, stuff like that. Again, mostly, even though we're hospitality bookkeepers and we're generally available, like I work some ridiculous hours sometimes, like in terms of the time of day, but we generally work office hours. Hospitality businesses generally are open a lot later. And so if they've made a mistake or something and tried to fix it, they'll then send you a note about how they've tried to fix it. If that integration runs
at midnight on WhatsApp.
Exactly. Yeah. If that integration
Tim, I had this great idea. Yeah.
Oh, you'd be amazed. Like, yeah. Oh, is there any chance we can get together and look at my last stock take? It's 2:30 a.m. Why do you need to send that message now? Oh, I was just thinking about it. So, great. I'm going to reply at 6 a.m. when I get up and you're asleep. How's that?
I would like to take it back a step, if that's okay. You said some things that I don't fully understand, and maybe some others don't. You said FMS. What's that acronym?
FMS. So FMS, and it might be my terrible audio connection. So that's what we're now supposed to call financial management system, right? So that's Xero, Sage, QuickBooks, Free Agent, obviously, etc.
Nice. You said a control account. Are you able to? And obviously, we haven't got like time to go into details. Can you laymanize what a control account is for the non-bookkeepers and non-accountants? Like, what's this?
Yes. So the point of using laymanize, is that actually a word, or have you just
I say it often. I don't know if it's a real word or not.
I love it. I'm definitely.
It's a good word. I'm going to use it repeatedly. So the point of a control account is to almost to double check your working. But in terms of how we use it for reconciling EPOS systems, is when we post a certain amount of sales, we don't post the result in cash, card, etc. payments directly to the bank account. We post it into a control account, and then when that cash is banked or the money comes in from the card provider a couple of days later, we then post that from the control account to the bank account. So it's like a middle step. And if you then look at that over the course of a whole month or a week or a quarter or whatever, however often you reconcile it, you should, in theory at least, be able to see any differences, any mistakes, any problems should make themselves apparent. What it's also useful for is tracking things like, well, you know, I was expecting to have £10,000 of cash banked this month. I've only banked 9,000. Why is that? Here's all these receipts for things that we paid cash for out the till. Those things also go through that control account. So the control account in an EPOS, like as it relates to an EPOS system, it's almost like, think about it as being like a bank statement for your till, for your cash draw. That's how it should be used. It's not necessarily the perfect solution, but it works pretty well, and it's better than not having it.
And
that was a really sorry.
Go on, mate.
Okay, that was a really helpful explanation. Thank you. Like, it's like a bank statement for your till. That's just like, that helps people who aren't bookkeepers and accountants understand. That's really helpful. Thank you, Tony. Sorry, you were saying.
And that presumably would help to identify those cancelled but not cancelled invoices or tables that, you know, they refunded or whatever that didn't get put through at the end of the shift, because you'd have that would have come through into the control account, and then you'd have a balance. So say we paid nothing out of cash in the till, then you would have the difference would be there, and presumably then that narrows down the investigation rather than having to, okay.
Because you can look at a day or two rather than a whole month. The other thing that's important with EPOS system into FMS integrations is that you, and actually why a lot of the integrations are terrible, is a lot of restaurants and bars and things are open past midnight, and so the day that something is sold isn't necessarily the day that it's sold. So we have a client who is a nightclub here, they're open until 2 a.m. If they sell something at 1:30 a.m. on Sunday, that belongs to Saturday sales, right? So we decided long ago that we're going to use the day their shift starts as their day of record, not the day their shift ends, which is pretty common because it's the largest part of the shift. A lot of EPOS systems will only run at certain times, so they'll pull through. They'll go, oh, on Saturday night we did $5,000, but the EPOS system has actually recorded it as $3,000 from Saturday and $2,000 from Sunday. But then it's also got £1,000 from Friday night that crossed them Saturday morning, and it makes it really confusing. Now, if you're using a control account, you can at the very least, unless they're open 7 days, which is rare for that type of business, you can at the very least get to a point at the end of the week, the next Tuesday, where you've got a 0 point where there are no sales and no receipts, and you take that as your point that you can cut off. So if you don't have a control account, you've got multiple payments matched to multiple invoices, and everything's an absolute nightmare.
And this is a good example of where real life doesn't fit into prescribed accounting and bookkeeping rules, right? And actually that's what drives the bus, because that's what they need to see from what did we do on Saturday night. It's not useful to phone me. We did $3,000 before midnight and then $9,000 after midnight when everyone got happy and started splashing the shots around, you know, sold a couple of big bottles of vodka or something. It's fascinating.
So Tim, going back to where you're based and how you have to work and the slightly different legislation, does that affect how you can work with fintech vendors?
Yeah, because most of them are just not interested in working with us at all, sadly. So there's a lot of misunderstanding amongst a lot of fintech vendors around whether they actually can provide services to crown dependencies or not, whether they might need a Guernsey banking license, for example, which, if you wanted to actually operate a bank here, you would. But a lot of the businesses that exist that we would love to be able to work with just don't do anything in Guernsey at all. And some of them just simply write it off. They just kind of ignore the fact that we exist. They're not really just ignoring us. They're ignoring us, Jersey, Isle of Man. And in theory as well, there's at least a couple of British overseas territories that speak English and use pounds, that could, that use the UK based sort code and account number system. So they're all part of the same, they're regulated in roughly the same way. It really winds me up when people simply write it off. I know we're not a big market for them, but there are plenty of vendors who tell us either, look, we want to work with you, we're looking at how we can provide services in Guernsey, or they're just really open and honest and say, do you know what, actually, I don't think we ever are, but that's because we've looked into it. And we would actually have to apply for a banking license or do some certain regulation or anything like that. And it's not worth our while for the 9 customers that we're gonna get in. That's fine, right? If people have tried and made an effort. So one that I will mention, my name is Telleroo, right? I had a chat with Kaylee from Telleroo a while ago, and I was like, right, come on, Guernsey. And so what her response about Guernsey is like, honestly, don't know, but we're looking into it. And if we can provide services in Guernsey, we will provide services in Guernsey. But if we can't, we'll let you know why. That I love as an answer, because that's honest, that's fine. I understand why some people will actually never be able to provide a service here, as long as they've made an effort to at least see whether they can or not. Others, who I'm not going to name, but I did post about on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Someone who deals with both AP and AR and money coming in and out. They simply I booked a meeting with somebody, and it was to discuss some UK clients and a UK business. And just before our call, they emailed and said, I'm cancelling our meeting because I've seen that you're in Guernsey and we can't provide services in Guernsey. And I replied and said, well, I'm not talking to you about services in Guernsey, but yeah, cool, good to know. It was actually regards a UK client and UK business. And she said, oh, right, well, shall we have the call then? I said, no, absolutely not, because you've just made an assumption. So now I'm going to go and look elsewhere. Okay. And it's those two different attitudes are very, very different. I fully appreciate why some people will never be able to provide a service in Guernsey. I don't have an issue with that, but I want it to not be bullshit. I want them to not just be brushing us off, because it is a market. Yeah, it's not a huge market, but it's a market, right? And
hey, money is money, and business is business, right? Like,
exactly.
So yeah,
because there's like years ago, Revolut wouldn't provide services in Guernsey, and then they did a bit of work, and they realised that actually under their current regulatory regime and under the licenses they did have in place, they're like, oh, actually, there's literally nothing stopping us operating in Guernsey. So now they do.
Makes sense. I don't know who this random LinkedIn user is. It says integration and connection 0104 2025 stage 3. If I had to guess, that might be James Sundin.
Sounds like something James would say, doesn't it? Yeah,
like that's something he would say. But I don't want to assume because I can't see who that is. But that sounds like something he would say.
It doesn't sound like a full sentence, but yeah.
And obviously, for people watching, sometimes there's like a 10 to 15 second delay. So we talk about things, they type, and then it comes like 30 seconds later. So you might have been literally commenting on something you said, and it's now, the time it took to get on the screen, the time it took for me to click it. So apologies if that doesn't make sense.
There's a lot of James Sundin related clues in that stage 3. First to the fourth, I know is a big deal to him.
Tim, I need to ask you some silly questions because you've been a bastion of knowledge and awesomeness. Honestly, thank you. I've learned a lot. Hopefully our audience has. It's been great, but I got to ask you some silly questions. If there was one character from a TV show that you could punch in the face, no holds barred, no restrictions, no repercussions, you're not going to jail for doing this, who could you punch? Which character would you punch in the face?
Who would I punch in the face from any TV show ever?
Or film.
There's so many.
I know.
There's so many that you're like would just be. Who would you punch in the face first? Right, Ben from EastEnders, but specifically the Ben from EastEnders when he was really, really whingy.
You mean when he was a kid?
No, not when he was a kid. When he was like.
When he was like 17, 18. No. I get it. When he was like 17, 18, he was kind of like an emo kid. Yeah.
It was really irritating. Yeah, that episode of Ben from EastEnders straight away, without hesitation.
Cool. Would you like a serious question next or a silly question next?
Entirely up to you. Pick one out of the hat.
Okay. Precursor to the question: do you eat meat?
Yes.
If you could eat one meat for the rest of your life, forsaking all others, what meat/animal are you choosing?
Chicken, obviously. Chicken's the most versatile of all the meats. You can do so much with chicken.
Is it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you can do anything with chicken.
So you're saying you're going to have chicken. You can never have steak again.
Yeah, fine. I'll take that. Chicken nuggets, right? Chicken Kievs, chicken burgers, roast chicken, fried chicken, southern fried chicken in all sorts of different glorious coatings and flavors. I could go on for. There's so much more you can do with chicken than you can.
No one is making spaghetti bolognese with chicken mince.
No, okay, so just won't have spaghetti bolognese. It's not the end of the world, is it? If you can't have chicken nuggets, then like just occasionally, then it's a really sad world.
So I want to just flag a restaurant as we discuss this because I think that it is if you like chicken and particularly fried chicken, then this is a great place to eat. Is a restaurant called Chicken George in a place called Hitchin.
Are you peeling an apple right now?
No, I'm not peeling an apple. No.
You're looking down. I can hear like a squeaky, crunchy noise.
I'm actually playing with an empty box of raisins that my daughter polished off.
Okay.
And I think it's the squeaking of the cardboard. Sorry,
Thank you.
My super high tech mic has obviously picked that up. Yeah, Chicken George. It's like a fried chicken place, but it's like they have like one of them's like a barbecue one. It's got like frazzles crunched on top of it, and sort of like
Nice.
And then there's like a kind of garlic mayo-y one that they have, and then they have like a Thai one, and there's like a katsu one, and like you can have them as tenders or you can have them as wings. They got burgers and stuff there. They often do like collaborations with like various sort of barbecue related folks within the industry, and they win awards left, right, and centre. So yeah, if you ever get a chance, then yeah, Chicken George's comes highly recommended. You don't feel great afterwards. I'm pretty sure they put quite a lot of MSG in their food, but that's just my spidey senses tell me that.
MSG is just flavour. That's fine.
It's like, extra flavour. Yeah. So yeah, I would recommend Chicken George if you're into chicken.
I get the impression you both really enjoy food. I mean, everyone likes food, but some people enjoy it more than others. So it leads me to my next question, just off the top of the head. Presumably you guys do cook or can cook. Do you have signature dishes that you do to show off to guests or friends and family? What's your signature dish?
That's a great question. I'll let Tim answer first.
I really like making things that I can remember how to make without referring back to anything. So just penne alla vodka, just vodka pasta, tomato vodka and cream sauce is so easy and so tasty. And then that's a number one for me, right? My wife doesn't eat meat, so I have to cook a lot of food without any meat in, and I really hate using fake meat. If something is vegan, she's not vegan, she's vegetarian, but if something's vegetarian, it should just be vegetarian, right? It shouldn't be I was making this amazing spaghetti bolognese, but because I don't eat meat, I used wood shavings as the mince. No, just if you're not going to eat meat, commit to not eating meat, right? And there's so much food that you can make that naturally doesn't need any meat in it.
Yeah, like mac and cheese, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Favorite? That's a good question, right? Favorite non-meat based dish that isn't a dessert. Mine, I think, is Parmigiano melanzane. So it's like a sort of like a lasagna-y type thing, but without pasta, and it's like aubergines, tomatoes, sometimes mozzarella, pesto, and parmesan. First ate it in Sicily. They kind of came out and said, "Oh, we've got this left over." Round about the cut-off between Saturday and Sunday, and we're like, "Do you want to try some? Because it's going to go to waste." I was like, "Yeah, all right." And that was one of the best things I've ever eaten. I tried to recreate it, never quite got it, but passable. Would wholly recommend. Signature dish-wise, that is a good question. So, roast potatoes is something I'm very passionate about and have spent many hours trying to perfect to get them to the best that I can get them. And I think I'm pretty good. I'll go toe to toe on roast potatoes with most people, amateurs. But I think a cheeseburger, cheeseburger is my favorite. And they always spoke at length about this. I had an Instagram account for a while called Fireburger, which had I was just making silly burgers that were as nice to look at as they were to eat. So yeah. And I do a lot of chocolate brownie as well. There's a particularly good one recipe on the BBC Good Food website that is very simple and it gets excellent results. So yeah,
I don't trust BBC Good Food. I don't trust that website.
No.
You can learn all you need to learn about cooking new things just off TikTok these days, so it doesn't matter. And especially I absolutely love a single-use kitchen gadget. So something in the kitchen that can literally make one thing. So I got an omelette machine once. It's absolutely stunning. It's just got a bread maker. Sort of leave it just does it. But there's this thing called a crimpet. I don't know if you've seen it.
No.
If you're on TikTok or not.
Was it a TikTok shop purchase?
No, it wasn't, but it could have been. And so it's like a little circular thing that's hinged in the middle. And what you do is you get a wrap, like a tortilla wrap, and you put it on the crimpet thing, and you put any filling inside half of it, and then you close it, and you squeeze it, and it crimps it together almost like.
Oh, like a Findus crispy pancake.
For 5 minutes, exactly like a Findus crispy pancake, but it's your Findus crispy pancake. You can put anything inside it, and I really love seeing how ridiculously far you can take that. What is too much food to put in one tortilla wrap, and how long can I go without something just exploding in the air fryer while it's cooking? And so far I've not reached that limit, so I'm going to keep trying.
El Burrito Monster, have you seen that guy?
Yeah, it's good. And I think it's very similar to that.
What is this?
So I think probably how he started was he made a burrito and he filmed himself and he put it on the internet, and he just kind of he's just gone off down that road, and he's just never stopped. And I don't know how the guy manages to come up with the ideas that he comes up with, but he'll take like he did a ravioli one the other day, right? So he's like, he makes the first ravioli, which is not a burrito, but he's obviously similar-ish, right? You know, like some idea of food wrapped in something. And he'd make this like ravioli, and then he made another ravioli, put the first one inside it, made another one, and then made another one, a bigger one, and ends up with this like pillow-sized ravioli, and then he'll slice through, and he's at the end, he goes scran, dips it in his thing, and takes a massive bite.
Oh, that guy! I didn't know his name. The Scran guy. I know him. Yeah. Okay, I didn't know his name. But I know the Scran. Yeah, he makes ridiculously, but it's also good food. He also he plays homage to like the original recipes. Like he always does stuff, and it's like he does it right first, and then twists it, which I like. Sorry, I didn't know his name.
You can make any food into like a burrito or a wrap, and then that's convenient because then you can walk around with it. So like you can put anything into a wrap, and you suddenly create like a portable roast dinner, and your life's complete basically.
I love the idea of a single-use kitchen item. That's such a good like category for I'm an anti-kitchen gadget person. I don't like kitchen gadgets. But I did get bread maker for Christmas, and that has been revolutionary because I've never had much success with like bread and getting it to rise and not having kind of uncooked bread at the bottom of the bread. So I would recommend that. Is pretty good.
I do have one that makes like, you know, if you make like a sausage and egg McMuffin, right? So we don't have McDonald's there. So
wait, do you say you don't have a McDonald's there?
We don't have McDonald's. We've got no chain fast food in Guernsey at all.
So happy times or sad times? Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's a bit of both. It's a bit of both because it means we've got loads of like actually decent independent fast food places, but also it means every time we come to the UK, we can just have like McDonald's. Like also when you get into Gatwick now, Greggs is right there. So you can land, get Greggs, then you get into London, get McDonald's, and then for breakfast McDonald's, and then for lunch Subway. Maybe chucking a KFC or something like that, and then everyone's like, "Oh, you just come over here and spend 3 days eating all the terrible fast food." It's like, yeah, because it's a treat. Like we can't do this at home. Like,
I've done it for a week.
Have I been to McDonald's 5 times in this 3-day visit? Yeah, I have. And what?
Oh yeah, I'm not even sorry.
Tim, thank you for humouring us. It's been fun.
Absolutely.
Before we wrap this up, 2 things. 1, do you have a nugget of wisdom or bombshell you want to drop on people? And 2, do you have any questions for Tony or myself? Because we bombarded you. Any questions you want to just ask us?
I mean, I do want to know, like, if you were, like, I didn't really have a good answer to this question, so I want to know what biscuit you would be if you were a biscuit for a start.
Okay, my answer is very well polished and rehearsed because I've been asked this question for over a decade. I used to say I was a rich tea until a friend of mine pointed out they're not a very good dunking biscuit. When you dunk them, they're quite flimsy, so I don't want to be a flimsy or soggy biscuit. If you're laughing at soggy biscuit, I know why. Shame on you. Second, so I used to say I'm a hobnob. They're a good, simple, no-frills biscuit. They're not in your face like a party ring. But they're not boring like a digestive. Like most people will get on with a hobnob. Like no one's got beef with a hobnob, but they're not exceptional. But they're like not terrible. They're all right. They're a good mid biscuit.
That's fair.
I feel like I identify very specifically with like the Foxes. They come in like they have like a wrapper and then like a tray, like a plastic tray, which I know is not good for the environment.
Yeah,
it's recyclable or compostable, but they had like they're thick and then they have these like chocolate chunks in them, and I feel naturally drawn to that being my biscuit, but I'm not really sure why. If it's just because I love the taste of it, because I don't really have like the link as to why that is me. But
it's like a premium biscuit. They're like £4 and you get like 7 of them in the pack, and then you eat more in one go. Yeah,
it's a pretty large and hench biscuit.
It is a pretty large.
It's quite a hench biscuit, and that's the first time for a while I've heard anyone refer to anything as hench. I'm absolutely here for it.
I don't know if you met Tony in real life, but the man is hench. It is what it is.
It's true. Yeah. So I have one last question for Tim. So I don't want to open this can of worms because we're closing in on time, but like, so I in my roles in accountancy, my final role was I was a corporation tax guy predominantly, but my final role I was split between corporation tax and hospitality. So there was a guy I used to work with called Peter Davis, who was the guy when it came to trunk schemes, which I'm sure you're maybe familiar with if you're a little smile there. Yeah, so I did 2 or 3 years helping him build what he now has, which is they've just been acquired by Morse Kingston Smith, and his trunk business there in the early days. So I have a sympathy and a affinity. The light in me sees the light in you when it comes to working with hospitality businesses, because they are their own category, right? And fun and challenging and interesting in many different ways. So yeah.
They're good fun, and anyone who deals with trunk schemes, frankly, like you can have them, because they're the worst part of the whole entire business.
I would just totally disagree. I had a lot of fun doing the trunk schemes. Yeah,
I'm sure, but I just dealing with them as part of the whole thing. They take up an inordinate amount of time, and the rules around them can be quite funny. And if you can get someone else to manage the trunk schemes for you, then you probably should. Look, you asked as well, do I have any pearls of wisdom, right? And my pearl of wisdom is don't try and do your own trunk scheme. No, it's
Beats Peter.
My main thing is that, like, anyone who thinks that they can't actually afford to engage bookkeepers, you can, right? There's a bookkeeper out there for everyone. There's a type of bookkeeper out there for everyone. There's a service for everyone. And if you are any sort of SME and anything sort of, below large, then you can get more value for less money by outsourcing your bookkeeping to a bookkeeping practice rather than having in-house accounts assistants, basically. And I'm not saying that you should fire all of your accounts assistants and call us, but I'm saying that if you're getting to the point where you're considering hiring your first accounts person, what you should actually do is engage a bookkeeper instead.
Okay. Yeah.